Hello, Definers. Welcome to episode 92 of Sustainability Defined, where we define sustainability one concept and one bad joke at a time. Today, we are bringing back our Hot Commodities series for a second episode.
Woo!
Yay! In this series, the Hot Commodities series, we cover a singular commodity or resource and really dive into its supply chain. Last time in the Hot Commodities series, we talked about chocolate and the cacao supply chain, where we sat down with Tony's Chocolonely. This time, we're talking about all things matcha! Let's get into it. I'm your host, Cecilia.
And I'm your host, Nethra. And Definers, I have been foaming at the mouth for this episode because matcha is one of my favorite things. I was a former barista who never had a cup of coffee, and I never understood the hype of iced lattes and Americanos and all of that.
Don't come for my Americano.
You're right. Okay, I feel like you're a coffee lover, and that's fair. But I finally feel like I understand the coffee lover's plight now because I have gotten so into understanding the different grades of matcha, from culinary grade to ceremonial grade to the different growing regions. And after this episode, I can say with confidence that there's so much I didn't know and now learned about this commodity.
This truly is a piping hot commodity.
Super hot.
Matcha is popping up everywhere. She's super hot. We are seeing Gen Z consume this drink like no other. On TikTok, there's trending strawberry matchas and matcha cloud foams, whatever that means. They're everywhere. The world is consuming matcha so much that there's actually a global shortage of matcha. Nethra, you might be one of the number one culprits. I don't know.
Guilty. I am a shameless collector.
And since you're such a stan, I need to know, what's your favorite way to drink matchas? Walk us through your favorite recipe here.
Cecilia, I'm a simple girl, really. And for me...
Oh, she's a simple girl.
For me, it goes as follows. 2 ounces of matcha to 2 ounces of water over some Westlight soy milk. And yes, it does matter. And stay with me here.
I'm with you.
I add flaky sea salt and maple syrup. It's the perfect variance in flavor from a traditional simple syrup, but it also does not overpower the matcha.
That sounds delightful, Nethra, but I'm not sure how simple that really is. But now I want one. Like, I've also been seeing the flaky sea salt trend, and I want one now. But my favorite way to drink matcha is coconut matcha with like either coconut syrup or coconut water, a little bit of milk and matcha. Kind of weird, but so yummy. And then my next try is this TikTok trend that I've been seeing, this like matcha cloud foam. My mouth is watering just thinking about it.
I have been seeing that. And you know what? Before we get too excited about matcha, let's break down the episode for the definers. First, we are going to walk you through the supply chain of this commodity. Then we'll talk about some of the environmental impacts and the challenges climate change poses to this product. And finally, we're going to finish off the episode with one of my favorite interviews we have done so far on the podcast with Michael from Wild Orchard Tea. He's going to be joining us.
Yay, Michael. Can't wait for that interview and can't wait for you definers to listen to what he has to say. Wild Orchard Tea is a brand rooted in soil health and the highest standards of sustainability. They are based in Jeju Island in Korea and really emphasize the use of regenerative agriculture and high-quality flavor profiles. Stick around to learn more about how they are growing matcha sustainably in our interview portion, and for some myth-busting, let's just say Nethra might be thinking twice before spending $30 on a tin of ceremonial-grade matcha. But first, without further ado, let's talk matcha.
Yeah, let's talk matcha. What is matcha? How did it get so popular? Well, matcha has been a popular flavor in East Asian regions for centuries. New York City baristas and Gen Z TikTokers did not invent this, believe it or not. The popularized form of drinking matcha in lattes is not even how it is traditionally consumed or prepared. For centuries, this commodity represented meditative practices, ceremonies, gathering, and was considered a luxury item.
I can't believe strawberry matchas weren't in existence in 7th century. Like, what would they have been saying about the way we consume matcha now?
I know.
On a serious note, though, we must pay cultural respect to the roots of where this drink comes from and understand that this is more than a trendy menu for so many cultures. Nethra, this reminds me of when you were ranting about the phrase chai tea.
You guys, you're just saying tea. I mean, chai means tea. And it represents so much in Indian culture, not only food culture, but also a deeper, rather darker history of colonization that this region, India and South Asia, has experienced, and how tea was a rather exploitative commodity that led to economic growth in some regards, but also the erasure of people and native land and native species in other regards.
Right. There is a history tied to literally almost every commodity that we enjoy today. And definers, we hope to cover a small portion of the vast history of this particular commodity. Many people even think that matcha originated in Japan because it has been so popularized in Japanese culture, but it was actually started in China and can be traced back to the Tang Dynasty. It was the Japanese Buddhist monk who brought the tea seeds along with the Zen Buddhist methods of preparing powdered green tea, where it became central to the religion and the development of the Japanese tea ceremony.
Right. And you mentioned this earlier, but could you imagine trying to explain the cookies and cream matcha from Blank Street Coffee to that same monk who brought it over?
No, literally, like I think about that all the time, and it kind of reminds me of the meme of imagine explaining this to a Victorian child, you know?
Yes, yeah.
He'd be like, "What is a peanut butter matcha?" But that one is really good. I won't
I
lie.
haven't
Anyway,
had that.
moving on from Blank Street.
Well, first, let me try to explain matcha to the definers. We lost the plot somewhere, but
We lost the plot a little bit.
matcha is a high quality green tea that is finely ground into powdered form. It has been regarded for its many health benefits and high antioxidant properties, as well as its ability to provide sustained energy and focus. It's cultivated from the tea plant known as the Camellia sinensis, I think that's how it's pronounced, and primarily grown in regions of Japan. The main area for cultivation is in Uji, which is southeast of Kyoto. Uji is considered to be the ultimate terrain for matcha cultivation, and some of Japan's most distinguished and expensive matcha comes from this region. Another distinguished matcha region is Nishio, a historic tea cultivating region dating back to the 12th century. Its climate is mild, remote, and elevated, and has very fertile soil, providing matcha with an abundance of umami and maximum nutrients.
And for the definers out there, umami is a Japanese term for the fifth basic taste, often described as a savory flavor that enhances other tastes. I also had to look this up. So, but back to production. The leaves of this plant is where the matcha powder comes from. However, the growth style, harvest, and production style are different from those of other green teas. The very best matcha is harvested by hand, and it's typically done just once a year in May. Some producers will sometimes even do a second harvest called a second flush, or maybe even a third. But roughly 6 weeks before harvest, sometime in mid-April or early May, the tea fields are surrounded by scaffolding and are covered from the top. And the idea behind this is to slow and gradually decrease the amount of sunlight so that tea leaves can begin to increase both chlorophyll and amino acids. Super cool, right? This gives matcha its sweet taste with no trace of bitterness due to the high content in the amino acids. So typically the highest grade or of matcha is pretty much in near darkness by the time it's time to be harvested.
It's kind of spooky.
So spooky.
And when it's time to harvest, this is when the laborious and immensely time consuming process starts to take place, right, definers? Only the small and greenest part of the plant are typically picked and cultivated for matcha. And typically this is like 2 leaves at the tip of each shoot.
They're exclusive.
Very exclusive. Then they are steamed to preserve color and nutrients and thoroughly dried. And once they are dried, they get sorted for grade. So again, the greenest earn the highest grade. And the grade also refers to the cultivation process. We'll hear more about that from Michael. And then the destemming and deveining process begins, and the leaves that then make it through are called tencha, and they are refrigerated until they're ready to be ground into a fine powder that we all know and love by large granite wheels. So as you can see, it's a very extensive, very delicate process.
Basically, what I'm hearing is the more green, the better, and the more expensive. But I guess we'll learn more about this in our interview portion.
For some myth busting.
I know, I love a good myth busting. But what happens next before matcha arrives in your cup as a vibrant green latte or the cloud matcha that, we know and love? Well, it travels a very long journey. Once it's harvested and processed, it's packaged and exported from primarily Japan, across the globe. Today, matcha is used in so many products, from lattes to smoothies to ice cream, matcha brownies, and even some skincare. So, how does it get to be to these final products? Before it's exported, matcha is packaged into sealed containers or tin using foil bags or resealable pouches to prevent oxygen, light, or heat from degrading the color and the flavor of the powder.
Right. Matcha is a very delicate product and really shouldn't be stored in a transparent or glass container as it can quickly oxidize. A lot of times, packaging is done closer to the origin or harvest to preserve freshness. And there are some major companies in the region of Uji, like Marukyo Koyamen, I think I'm pronouncing that completely wrong, and Apudo Tea.
I think you killed it.
Thank you. These are long-standing companies, and they ship domestically as well as internationally through wholesalers, exporters, and directly by producer brands. However, some producers also sell tencha, which is that leaf that hasn't been ground yet, or the unfinished tea, to wholesalers that then handle the grinding, packaging, and exporting process.
There are several challenges in the logistics of this product. Matcha must be shipped at a fast pace due to its sensitivity with exposure to elements like we mentioned before, oxygen, light, air, and heat. And due to this, matcha enters what can be known as cold chain logistics, which involves chilled storage, humidity controls, and light-proof containers to preserve the color and the freshness of the matcha. This is something that you'll just hear us repeat, like preserve the color, preserve the freshness.
Right, because that's sort of what is the main staple of matcha. And I'm really going to emphasize this part, definers, because cold chain logistics is an important term to know when dealing with commodity supply chains. So it refers to the process of transporting and storing temperature sensitive products such as food or pharmaceuticals while maintaining a specific temperature range throughout the entire supply chain from manufacturing to final delivery. Hence the name cold chain. This requires a lot of resources and means more volume of the shipment is being taken up for the preservation and for the refrigeration than the actual product itself. So this will down the line lead to more shipments, less efficient packing, and therefore more emissions. And most importantly and impactfully, the increased use of refrigerants.
Uh-oh. Nethra, I'm curious, why are you honing in on refrigerants? Could you enlighten us on the definers?
Well, Cecilia, they are often overlooked but really shouldn't be. Refrigerants are made of many different compounds, many of which have been regulated for their potent and intense concentrations of greenhouse gases that have directly and severely been linked to the ozone depletion that we've seen. So these are some chemical compounds like CFCs and HFCs, which have destroyed stratospheric ozone. So much that Project Drawdown.
Project Drawdown, the Bible of climate solutions.
By the way, for the definers who aren't listening, like Cecilia said, it's the Bible of climate solutions. And amongst their vast list of climate solutions, it lists refrigerant management as a single most impactful solution to reversing climate change.
There you go.
Right.
Why are we not doing that? Let's do it.
Got to get on it, I guess. And they emphasize two key strategies, which is refrigerant management, which involves reducing leaks, recovering refrigerants from old equipment, and proper disposal, and the adoption of alternate refrigerants with low global warming potential, such as ammonia, carbon dioxide, and propane, to replace high GWP HFCs. So those are just that standard refrigerant that has been notorious. And these actions are critical because refrigerants are some of the fastest growing and most potent greenhouse gases, trapping thousands of times more heat than carbon dioxide.
Well, that doesn't sound too pretty, Nethra. Now I understand, and we can all understand why you were honing in so much on the refrigerants. And this is a part of the supply chain that can be easily overlooked. It's easy to think just about the growth and production phase and think about the supermarket phase and consumption and overlook the impacts of transport and maintenance of the products. So to recap for you definers, there are several packaging logistical needs for matcha. Number one, it must be oxygen free, meaning vacuum sealed packaging to prevent oxidation. Number two, it must be light proof to prevent chlorophyll degradation. Number three, it must also be moisture proof. And number four, it must be stored in cold, refrigerated conditions that we just talked about, that cold chain logistics, in order to preserve the color, flavor, and nutrients of matcha.
Exactly. She's a demanding girl.
She's so demanding.
And we can all imagine how tedious this international shipping chain, this cold chain, is due to these requirements. And typically, under cold chain protocols, there are a couple phases in this process. So, origin warehouse, this is where the matcha is stored in Japan or the producing country prior to export. This needs to have good quality conditions. Freight transport, matcha is typically shipped via refrigerated air cargo or cold package containers, and those custom clearances. So we must maintain temperature control to avoid quality loss to keep standards up. This step ensures the process and the product meets all legal requirements for import and export between countries. For example, the U.S. food facility registration is required that products must comply with food safety and the Food Safety and Modernization Act, and Japan uses several labels and certifications to facilitate smooth customs clearance and avoid any delays. The most popular label is the JAS Organic, or Japanese Agricultural Standard label, which requires the product to meet organic farming standards as set by Japan's Ministry of Agriculture.
And then, after they pass through customs, there is step number 5, the distribution hub phase, where matcha is stored in yet another refrigerated warehouse in the destination country, to then await for step number 6, the last mile delivery. Here, cold or insulated transport trucks make it to specialty stores, cafe, and to other end consumers. So there you have it, definers. That's how matcha gets to your cup.
Incredible.
Incredible.
What a lengthy process. And this commodity in particular is very interesting compared to a product like coffee or chocolate because of the high maintenance. Which leads me to wonder, what is the carbon footprint of this entire supply chain? What could it be?
What a great and scary question, Nethra. I don't even want to think about answering this question because I'm scared about what the answer could be. But we scoured the internet for you definers for some life cycle analysis on matcha, and the data is minimal, especially because the demand for this product has really skyrocketed to the point of a literal global shortage. Each cup of matcha carries an estimated 40 to 100 grams of CO2 equivalent emissions. That may not sound like much, but think of it this way. One matcha is like driving a car for about a quarter to half a mile.
Wow.
Or charging your phone 40 to 100 times. I mean,
That's crazy.
right?
That's crazy.
And then you think about people having 3, 4 matchas a day, which is crazy, but I mean, you do you, but just think about these statistics a little bit. And most of the impact comes from energy heavy process of shading and stone grinding the tea leaves, plus the energy used to boil water. Compared to a standard cup of steeped green tea, which can be about 13 grams of CO2 equivalent, matcha's footprint is noticeably higher, though it's still much lighter than a latte made out of coffee. So I guess we are doing something right by drinking matcha a little bit. I don't
Switching
even know.
over. Yeah. It's curious to see how this supply chain will track in the future because it's not new in terms of the commodity being used, but the demand for
Right.
matcha at this level is. So I'm curious to see how it's going to change the industry. We'll have to track that for you to find.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be a lot of debates around this topic for sure. So excited to keep up
Right.
with this.
And the environmental impact doesn't end with the carbon footprint. Now, typically matcha production is dominated by small family-run farms in Japan. These farmers have mastered aspects of soil fertility and ongoing sustainability of the land and techniques such as crop rotation and organic fertilizers. I mean, one thing to note about matcha is the region in which it's grown, the soil in which it's grown really affects the flavor profiles. That's why people scout out certain matchas from certain regions. And prepare yourselves for this rabbit hole that we're about to enter, definers. But with the recent booming demand of matcha, a lot of farms are facing the pressure to scale up, which could lead to soil exhaustion and loss of biodiversity as a result.
No, and why is this boom happening, you may ask? Well, social media and wellness trends have significantly increased over the past recent years and have really contributed to matcha's rise. According to global forecasts, the matcha market is expected to reach between 5 and 8 billion dollars by 2035, and for reference, it currently sits at about 3 billion. So, that's a spike.
That's crazy. And this puts a lot of pressure on the intricate supply chain and logistics within matcha harvesting. Top Japanese producers have even paused sales of premium grade matcha due to overdemand. Now, China supplies over 25% of culinary grade matcha, which is a lower grade used in desserts and other things, not really for your traditional latte. And Vietnam is also an emerging reliable supplier for the product due to these challenges.
And because of these skyrocketing demands, we also can see the rise in prices. For example, Sustainability Magazine published a 170% price increase compared to last year. Global tariffs also play a factor into these price demands, and we can also expect supply constraints as authentic matcha typically comes from these small Japanese family farms that we mentioned earlier that have limited annual yields because of the one time harvest in May. And then we can also see diversification risks where rapid expansion can lead to a lower quality source of matcha, for example, non shade grown. According to an article by BBC, a US based tea importer, Lauren Purvis, says that her customers are seeing what was once a months of matcha supply is now quickly running out in a few days. So this leads me to ask the big question. Nethra, is there a matcha shortage?
Sadly, there is a matcha shortage, and it's not just No, I know
No!
it's tragic. And it's not just the fact that rising global demand is putting pressure on Japanese and other farmers. Heat waves and climate challenges are also cutting yields and driving this shortage of this commodity further. And to add yet another challenge to the shortage, Japan is facing a lower rate of farmers as its population ages, further putting stress on the issue. But let's go back to the heat waves. Japan has endured intense heat waves last summer, negatively affecting harvest yields. Sustainability magazine notes that one farmer in the Kyoto region, Yoshia, saw a 25% decrease in typical harvest. So we're experiencing soaring demand, but decreasing supply and threats to the supply chain due to climate change.
I feel like I'm in an economics lesson right now, and everything just keeps piling up and up and up, and there's yet another challenge. This is a
A
wicked
wicked
problem.
problem.
Right. Oh my
Jinx.
God, jinx. Anyway, as demand increases, new fields are being planted, but according to various sources, this could take up to 5 years before they're even ready to be harvested. So, to meet these demands, land has to be cleared to plant these fields. Let's not forget that crucial part as well.
Right. So, what is being done to address this challenge? Well, Japanese stores have imposed limits on the quantity of matcha, which is, oh my gosh, that's my worst nightmare, um, for each customer.
It's like you travel to Kyoto, you're like, I'm gonna buy a whole year's supply of matcha because you're in Japan, and then you can't.
Yeah, they're like, you can only have two, which is what is happening. And that's a response to the excessive hoarding and trending activity that has worsened the shortage. I'm guilty.
Guilty. Did we bring this onto ourselves? Like, was this social media's fault? This is a debate in and of itself. We don't have to get into this, but just something
Matcha
to
talk.
leave you with.
Tell us about matcha
Def-
talk, Cecilia.
Yeah, no, this is also a rabbit hole, but definers, you may have seen this on social media. There are like a couple of online communities, mainly on TikTok, what can be known as Matcha Talk, where a lot of enthusiasts will share their favorite products, drinks, treats, etc. This is where I found out about matcha brownies. I mean, there's so much on here. But this has sparked heated debate over issues of excessive consumption amid scarcity. So, what are exporting countries like Japan doing to overcome this shortage? Well, we mentioned the limits on consumption per customer, but there are other strategies taking place as well.
Firstly, governments like the Japanese government are offering subsidies to encourage farmers to switch from growing other teas to now growing matcha. And farmers are also adopting new technologies like more effective shading systems, which we will touch on in the interview to improve efficiency. The shading process in matcha is what blocks that sun and triggers that chlorophyll production for the vibrant green color. And this shading was traditionally done with bamboo, jute, and other natural materials, but has been modernly switch to thick plastic tarps, which can leach into the soil and leaves themselves.
Oh
And
no.
Michael at Wild Orchard Tea is actually trying to combat this, so we'll hear from him in our interview.
Ooh, exciting. Stick around. Anyway, additionally, countries like China, Taiwan, and South Korea have began to increase their own matcha production capacity in order to meet this demand. However, the Global Japanese Tea Association deems matcha as naturally scarce or inherently limited. That is almost the charm of it, right? This is another debate with matcha in and of itself, but
Right.
harvested in small batches and during specific times, this is what made it a luxury for so long. So, where do we fall in this debate? How can we navigate this? For starters, overconsumption is never sustainable. Buy what you need.
And vote with your dollar, as we say on every episode.
Boom!
Cecilia was waiting for that drop.
I was like having a drum roll moment in my head.
And do your research. Now, definers, it's time for the interview portion of the episode. Stay tuned to learn more about matcha from the farmer's perspective and to learn about how regenerative agriculture is used in production to offset some of the environmental impacts that we spoke about.
Okay, definers, we have reached the interview portion of our episode today, and we are joined by Michael Hom, the co-founder of Wild Orchard Tea that has won over 25 international awards for quality and taste. So welcome, Michael. We would love to know how you got started in the tea business. What made you wake up and decide to start a regenerative farm?
Well, thanks for having me, Nethra and Cecilia. It's a pleasure to be with you. For me, it was an interesting journey into tea. I first visited this wild orchard farm 23 years ago, and I was just blown away at the vision. Back then, they had just planted the seeds. It has only been a few years old, so you could hardly see the trees. They were very small. That's when I started to drink tea, right around that time. And I was never an avid tea drinker, but I would drink it. I would understand better the health benefits, and I was a consistent drinker. And about 7 years ago, my co-founder came to me and said, "Hey, what would you be interested in starting Wild Orchard together to represent this farm that I told you to visit 23 years ago?" And share it with the world. And that's all he had to say. I was all in from then.
I love that. Where is the farm?
The farm's located on Jeju Island. A lot of people don't know where it is, but it's becoming more popular because of the K dramas. A lot of the settings are on Jeju Island.
I'm gonna have to watch these K dramas
Yeah,
then.
yeah.
I know Jeju is also known for like the Korean spa movement. Like there's a spa called Jeju Spa near my
Yeah.
house, and it has like a bunch of saunas and stuff. So it's really nice.
It's considered the Hawaii of South Korea. A lot of honeymooners go there. It's on the
Ooh.
southern tip of South Korea, so it's a no visa tourist destination. So a lot of direct flights from China, Vietnam, other parts of Asia that go direct. You don't need a visa, and it's a wonderful tourist destination.
Okay, so any definers that are out there and they're getting married, this is where they should honeymoon.
Honeymoon at Wild Orchard itself.
Yes. Drink some
That
tea.
would be a cool experience. Well, obviously, this entire episode is about matcha, the matcha supply chain, the global demand, the global shortage, all of that good stuff. But what, in your opinion, makes matcha matcha? Like, what's the difference between matcha and green tea? Are there stricter certifications?
Matcha, literally in Chinese characters and in Japanese, it means powdered tea. Now, it's very simple. Matcha, what the meaning is. Powdered tea started in China, the birthplace of tea, but it's really in Japan where the modern matcha movement and the tradition was rooted. And it's really the Japanese, we have to give a lot of credit. Traditional matcha, or by convention, it means that it's a green tea. Second of all, about 2 to 3 weeks or a few weeks before harvest, there's a shading process. And what that does is it brings out the chlorophyll, brings out that vibrant green color because there's no sun. The chlorophyll is being brought up to the tip of the leaf. And then the L-theanine, the amino acid that is responsible for that umami sweet taste, that also gets pulled up during that shading process. And so matcha under Japanese tradition is very specific. And so it's that vibrant green color, the sweet umami, less bitter than the typical green tea or later harvest. And then there are standards like JAS, it's the Japan Agricultural Standard. Ever since maybe 20 years ago, USA Organic farms would get certified USA Organic. And most recently, there's something called regenerative organic certification that really focuses on soil health.
Very interesting. You mentioned that matcha was originally grown in China and now it's traditionally grown in Japan. And Wild Orchard is based in that honeymoon destination. Is there a difference between Korean grown matcha and Japanese grown matcha? And does this affect anything with production or the soil health, sustainability, things like that?
Or even certifications, like does it have
Very
to be
true.
grown in Japan?
Yeah, true.
Right. So, what we focus on our farm is really growing regeneratively, and that means focusing on soil health. But the other two pillars are animal welfare and farm worker fairness. So, it's very holistic, and it's a model for all farms to operate in this manner if we're really talking about benefiting human health and planetary health. And, the major theme of your topic is sustainability. And so when I go around and I ask people, what's your definition of sustainability? A lot of people, like some people are very quick to answer, but other people have to think about it. And the predominant answer I get, and I'm curious what you guys think about this, is just make sure things don't get any worse. Make sure we can maintain. And that's the definition of
And the
sustainability.
ability to sustain.
It's
Yeah.
a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Long term success.
Long-term success, especially with our climate crisis, let's not make sure it keeps going down. Let's make sure that it levels off and that we can maintain biological systems, all the havoc that's being wreaked today. But I have a challenge for everybody. I really think we need to go beyond sustainable. And it's one of the things we focus on our farm. And the problem I see in sustainability is that people tend to define it one dimensionally. Like they'll take the whole picture and then condense it down to one and focus on sustainability. But we really have to look at holistic sustainability. And what I mean by that is the outcome. So, how is this sustainable for our health? So, the people, all the people that live on the planet, the 8 billion people, how do we sustain people health or human health? And then at the same time, how do we sustain planetary health? And I think those two have to be the focal points of any sustainability discussion. And that's kind of what we focus on at our farm. We say what we grow here and the way that we grow it, how is it impacting human health and planetary health? And I think those should always be the two pillars.
Of course, definitely. Yeah. Nethra, how do you define sustainability? I'm curious.
Well, I mean, it's all in the name, right? The ability to sustain. It's for me, I mean, it is a pretty basic definition, but it's about, yeah, leaving things better than how we found them, not just the same. Being able to sustain generations in the same way that our ancestors were able to sustain, creating clean waterways, the right to healthy water, air, and produce and nutrients. I know we're going to get into soil health a lot here, Michael, because that's a big focus of Wild Orchard and just regenerative agriculture in general. But yeah, it's like human health, planet health, it's all tied together. We're not disconnected from nature. We're a part of nature. And that's like something I try to drill in all the time. How do you define it, Cecilia?
I love that definition. I also I like the holistic way of looking at things. I think sustainability is something that has to be proactive rather than reactive, especially as climate change, continues to grow in its consequences. So I think looking at sustainability in all sorts of different angles is key to solving a lot of issues like soil health. Sustainability always has co-benefits, which is something that I love to focus on, just like soil health and nutritional value, which we'll get into later.
Especially as we see natural disasters inevitably increase with the climate crisis and climate impacts. It's thinking about how this is also not a new pattern, like the Dust Bowl in the 1920s. This is
Ooh,
Right.
a,
throwback.
a throwback, a direct result of like monoculture and, that idea of like dead soil, which,
Yeah.
is kind of like an oxymoron, but like it's sad that that's what it's come to. Even in our wetlands episode, just like the importance of wetlands for preventing erosion and helping mitigate like hurricane damage in Florida and coastal regions is insane. So these things are interconnected, definers. Always remember that.
It's amazing what nature can do.
Right. And well, swinging it back to matcha, I
Please.
don't know if we actually got your answer on this, but is there a difference between Korean grown and Japanese grown matcha, just very shortly?
I briefly went into the traditional methods of matcha. So if you follow that whole process, then that's in line with Japanese matcha. What we're doing is a little different. We want to honor the traditions of Japanese matcha, high quality matcha. But one of the things that we've been seeing, and it comes down to sustainability for human health, the majority of the shading material is synthetic. And so our concern is with high heat bearing down, even if it's only a few weeks, you're going to get leaching from these petroleum based synthetic materials. And we didn't want to compromise on the health aspect of what we're producing. Right now, our product is not shade grown, so it's going to be a little bit more bitter. You can't really classify it as traditional Japanese matcha, but we come up with a very high quality matcha that's grown in healthy soil. And we say it's for lattes because the milk counters the catechins and the bitter taste. It actually counterbalances really well, and it's one of the best lattes I think on the market based on our customer feedback. And so we are exploring natural shade grown methods using bamboo and others so that we can follow the traditional Japanese method as well. But we have our own unique method right now that really focuses on human health, and with the soil health, really focus on carbon sequestration and being climate positive.
You bring up a great point about the shading. Oh, also, you can't see this, definers, but I literally just finished a cup of your matcha, Michael. So I had it on the side. You sent some over because, quick little plug, we're doing a pop-up cafe for New York Climate Week, definers. If you're in town, you'll get to taste Wild Orchard tea and matcha in person at Marketplace of the Future. But going back to the shading elements, one of the big things in the matcha stratosphere right now is like everybody's judging the color of matcha. They're like, we want it to be the brightest green. That means it's the best quality. And I'm sure there's a lot of consumer misinformation. And there's probably a lot of things like we don't understand as consumers what goes into the shading process. The shading is what brings out that rich green color to give it that chlorophyll that you mentioned. You are obviously trying to create more sustainable health and ecosystem initiatives by removing that shading process. How do you explain that to consumers? Like, how do you show them, like, hey, we might not have the color that you're looking for, but we have the taste and it's still just as good?
Yeah, there's definitely an education process, and when people look at the color, when they make a latte, it's not such a big deal because they taste it and it's great, right? But if they mistakenly try to use water and do the ceremonial preparation of matcha, like what's tradition in Japan, using water with the whisk, it's not going to taste like Japanese matcha. So some people that miss that point, they try, they're like, this is not matcha. So we learn from that, and we label all of our packaging for lattes to make sure that there's not that misunderstanding. But at the same time, we want to honor Japanese tradition too. So we are looking at natural shading options so that we too will have that vibrant green matcha option as well. So it's just that our focus is health, climate health, human health, which is leading us into this direction. But we definitely want to have that vibrant green color matcha soon.
Is the vibrant green shading process, is that then considered ceremonial? Like, what's the distinction?
All shading is inherent in Japanese tradition for matcha. ceremonial essentially means that it's first harvest, like right after the spring rains in mid-April. It's the two buds that shoot first. When you harvest that, it's called tencha, and then you destem it, you grind it, you stone grind it, and that's like ceremonial matcha. But once again, you can have a first flush green tea grown in pesticide laden soil, and they still call that ceremonial matcha. So, what I want to share with your audience is ceremonial matcha just means that it's first flush, it's harvested from the first flush leaf, which is the most high quality, most expensive out of any part of the tree that's being harvested. But that's just one factor to consider the quality of the ceremonial. After that, you have to really focus on the quality of the soil. Is it organic? Are they spraying chemicals? And then if it's ceremonial, then you know that's a higher grade. Obviously, you can only validate that by tasting it, or if it's won international awards. But that just gives you a brief picture of what the difference is. And Japanese haven't really used ceremonial. It's the American or foreign marketing term, just so people could sell more, right? They could classify any first flush. Yeah, yeah.
That's kind of hilarious.
I'm all in for it.
People should not be tricked. If it says ceremonial, it doesn't mean it's the highest quality. It just means it's the first flush from any tea tree. We don't even know the quality of that tea tree.
So
Okay,
interesting.
this is a very good shout out because I have fallen for that trap before.
Same.
Also, the culinary grade, I've seen that too. What is that difference?
So culinary grade means the later harvest, the second harvest, or the third harvest. And
Wow.
those, because you're not getting as much L-theanine, you're going to get more bitter notes. And so that's why the culinary is mostly used for desserts, latte grades. But once again, I could say ours is culinary grade because we say it's for lattes, it's a later harvest. But I would say
Mm-hmm.
our culinary grade is higher quality than some ceremonial grades because ours is grown in healthy soil. So you have to look at, I talked about holistic sustainability. Every consumer needs to look at everything holistically. You can't just get drill down into one aspect and like focus on that. Otherwise, you could be prone to marketing.
This is where social media can be a little bit dangerous because, like, you
So
see all
true.
these matcha influencers and they're like,
Not the matcha
girlies, like,
influencers.
I,
They're
that's
everywhere.
big on my algorithm.
Me
But
too.
it's like, get ceremonial grade, look for the deepest color, look for this. But we often don't talk about, the respect to the land and other things like that and the
Mm-hmm.
quality and the soil and the nutrients. So thank you for that reminder.
Yeah,
Diviners,
yeah.
always do your research.
Or if it has chemicals or GMOs in
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
Yes, you never want any of that. So, Michael, you've mentioned a lot about soil health, its effect on ecosystem health, as well as human health, especially our microbiomes. I'm curious to know how Wild Orchard has made this such a focal point in their operations and production to keep the soil at its healthiest. So, how do you guys prioritize this? Are there any trade offs? Can you expand on this?
Happy to, happy to. So soil isn't dirt. Like when you go out and you see dirt, you just see it flying around. It's like a light brown color. But if you take a teaspoon of healthy soil, rich, dark, right?
Mm-hmm.
Teeming with life,
It's some of the best smell.
yeah. Actually, it's a good health practice to touch living soil. It's actually known to benefit your health, to ground you.
Okay. I'm gonna have to start digging in the backyard.
A single spoon of healthy soil contains more microbes than there are people on Earth. 8 billion microbes in there, and these
Wow. That
microbes.
is
It
crazy.
is crazy, and these microbes are essential not just for soil fertility and plant resilience, but for us humans as well. So when we grow food in soil that's teeming with microbes, especially something as minimally processed as matcha, we're actually consuming compounds that can actually nourish our own gut microbiome. And there's a growing solid body of science and evidence connecting soil health to human health, particularly our immune systems, our digestion, even our mental clarity, because of the importance of the gut microbiome. Even we call it the gut brain connection, right? So having a healthy gut microbiome actually benefits our brain health tremendously.
It's kind of like when you get that pit feeling in your stomach and your emotions, you really feel it in your digestive system too. Like I've actually read so many like books and podcasts about this and it's so fascinating. But it's really crazy how our digestion is like and our microbiome is pretty much the foundation of our health. And you could say the same thing about soil as the foundation of like ecosystem health. So love that connection.
Love the microbes.
Yes. Also, when we talk about like soil health and things like that, I mean, regenerative farms, we actually just had a guest on an upcoming episode that the definers will hear about that is also running an amazing regenerative farm. And we asked her, like, how do you scale this? Because the thing is, I think a lot of people associate these types of practices with just being really hard to scale and feed a global system. And when we're thinking about regenerative agriculture globally, I mean, matcha demand is rising like crazy. There's literally a global shortage right now. Companies are not able to meet the demand in stock. So, with that demand comes probably a looser importance on these practices and, a stronger desire to just produce, produce, produce. How do you see this affecting the landscape?
So I just spoke to a major distributor of tea and matcha this morning, and he did say obviously he sees global demand skyrocketing, but interestingly, there are shortages in Japan because they don't have enough processing capability. Like it's twofold. It's growing the tencha leaves for matcha with the shading practices. But the second equation for scaling is you have to send it to a processor, a stone mill, where they're going to grind it into a powder. And I heard that there's limited facilities in Japan to do that for the demand that we're experiencing globally. But in China, as we know, the China production machine is tremendous. So there's a lot of production going on in China that works. So once again, whenever demand is exploding, unfortunately, it leads to a lot of people taking shortcuts because they want to take advantage of that economic wave. So accelerating harvest before soil has time to recover. It doesn't result in a more nutrient dense end product. Those are things that everyone needs to consider. Some places even like take out other parts of the ecosystem to build more capacity for growing tencha. And what's the biological or ecological cost of that? So those are things to consider. Like for us, we planted by seed 26 years ago and it's grown to 1,000 acres. It's been very slow. So if you look at a farm and they've done things very slow, you know that you can trust in the quality, the intention of that farm. If something is all of a sudden done very quickly in a very short period of time, there's nothing against that, but there are compromises that are likely being made in some area.
Kind of reminds me of like fast fashion a little bit when you describe it that way. So you mentioned earlier a little bit about distributions and carbon footprints. So I'm imagining that one of the biggest carbon footprints associated with the supply chain of matcha might be the distribution of it globally to supermarkets across the world. So I'm curious to know, are there any efforts to mitigate these sorts of emissions?
So that is something that the audience today probably doesn't have a inside look on, but the tea industry is extremely opaque. There's so many middlemen. There's like the auction. There's the exporter. There's the importer. There's a broker. There's a distributor. There's so many middlemen that the farmer ends up getting the short end of the stick. What we're trying to create is a different model, a direct farm direct model. We call it direct trade, where we all the middlemen or as many as possible are cut out, so that the farmer gets what they need to continue to build the business, invest in it. Every farmer gets a living wage. They're able to continue to build the business to build more value, right, for the land and themselves. And so that's one of the biggest things. And then the other thing is tea is not grown in America other than a few places like the Carolinas or Hawaii. So all of this tea or matcha has to be imported. So there's obviously a carbon footprint equation there, with shipping, air shipping, ocean shipping, and then regional distribution. So once again, those are things we're trying to cut through to reduce the carbon impact because it's coming direct from the farm. And we want to show that this model works so that other people in the tea industry try to follow suit. And in the end, the farmers benefit the most.
That's awesome. It sounds like you guys are trendsetters. I love it. And it also sounds like you're hitting on all the triple bottom line pillars. Like, not only are you focusing on soil health, as well as the quality of the matcha and its nutritional value to human beings, but also uplifting the community by supporting farmers. So that's great to hear.
Yeah, we love livable wage.
Yeah.
And question for you. I mean, we brought up the idea of scaling these efforts, and I love that you're leading by example. Do you think and see other people following suit in the tea space?
When we first got our regenerative organic certification 3 years ago, it was a heavy investment, but we thought, hey, this is a way that we can share our story to a wider group. It's part of a collective group that really puts a huge focal point or importance on regeneration, the soil, treating farmers fairly, animal welfare. So we wanted to be a part of that movement. And the first year we were like, oh my goodness, we invested so much into it and we're not really getting any return. I mean, it's with a business, I mean, those are just natural things that come up. But especially in the last year, we've had so many farms across the world in Tanzania, Nepal, Sri Lanka reach out to us wanting to visit our farm. And it's one of the things that we're so excited about having our annual festival to invite these farmers from around the world to show what we do, learn from them, um, hold hands as fellow tea industry, you know, people that want to bring value to the world and show them, hey, let's move towards this direction, even for your company. Let's help you go direct and guide them as well with the experience that we have. So I think it's really important. Not to see other companies as competitors, but as potential collaborators to positively impact human and planetary health.
Definitely. That is great. I love that you're bringing along some people with you and just setting an example. I mean, even Whole Foods recently spotlighted you guys and did a mini documentary on the brand, which is a great. Definers, we're going to put that on our newsletter that's going to come out all about this episode so you can watch it. But where can people find Wild Orchard Tea outside of your website?
So aside of our website, we're on Amazon. We try to be where everyone prefers to purchase from. So we're in retail now, Whole Foods, Sprouts, most of the top organic and natural retailers. We're really focused this summer and the rest of the year on food service. So working with more cafes across the country to bring in our matchas, our tea. So if any of your definers have a favorite coffee shop and you want to see our stuff, just let us know, a warm introduction, and we can send samples. And our
Ooh,
black
love
matcha is
it.
doing very well in prominent cafes across the country. So I'm very confident that any introduction will yield to win-win. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love it. Well, I do have a coffee shop nearby me that I love. It's called Tate, if you've ever heard of it.
Nice.
Yes, it's really good. So, Michael, we wanted to ask you as we wrap up this interview the question that we ask all of our interviewees on the podcast, and it's the party fact question. So, if you were at a party or you were at a gathering and you wanted to shock people or surprise them with a fact about matcha or wild orchard tea, what would this party fact be? Tricky question.
So I grew up in Canada, so I played hockey, ice hockey, and I played until the college
Cool.
level. So nothing special. I
Oh,
mean, people will
wow.
only be impressed if I made the pros and stuff. But what happened was a Korean drama came to my hometown, and they started shooting a K drama about hockey, and one of the top movie stars in Korea was part of that. His name is Chang Dong-gun, and he's like the Tom Cruise of Korea. And so because I'm Korean, I actually got a role in that drama, and I came out in the drama, and I
Oh my
hung out with this
God.
major movie
That's
star
so
for a couple
cool.
weeks. So
That is such a party fact.
This
So
is such a
fun.
party fact. Wow. That sounds like a great time with the K drama Tom
Yeah,
Cruise. Now I'm gonna have to watch these K dramas.
yeah.
So fun. Well, we hope to see you on the next
Hmm.
K-drama, the next popular K-drama, and so excited for this episode to air and for the definers to learn about one of my favorite commodities personally that we've covered on the Hot Commodities series so far. So
Yeah, same.
thanks, Michael.
Thanks for the opportunity to tell our story.
Yes, we love to tell sustainable stories, so thank you for being here. And I hope we will all be sipping our matchas more mindfully from
I
now
will.
on.
This actually changed me. I'm a daily matcha drinker, so I've learned
Just a good
so
one. Just a
much.
good one.
I'm never buying the ceremonial matcha ever again.
Yeah, just a
Yeah.
good one.
Just a good one. So, Nethra, how does it feel to know that ceremonial grade matcha isn't all that it's talked up to be? Walk me through your thought process.
This has been a humbling experience to learn this because I have been exclusively buying ceremonial grade matcha.
Hey, whatever helps you sleep at night.
Right. But as we have learned on the podcast through the many episodes, from terms like reef safe to a slew of others, things can be unregulated and used for marketing or greenwashing, or in this case, luxury washing. So it was important for me to understand this. It was also impactful to see how passionate the team at Wild Orchard was on maintaining farmer integrity, growing practices, and soil health. It feels good to know that we can restore ecosystems through these practices.
It does feel good. And it's also really fun to have, these conversations with people like Michael where we can learn so much about common misconceptions and just myth bust all day long. So I love that.
Love myth busting.
Yeah, that was a great conversation. And I'm also super hyped to have learned that, I've been buying culinary grade matcha because it's a little bit cheaper and I buy it from Whole Foods. And I was like, oh, am I not, is this not the matcha that I'm supposed to be using? But it doesn't matter now. I'm going to be thinking about these practices the next time I order my matcha or purchase some powder, for when I make matcha at home. So, definers, thank you for tuning in to this week's episode in our Hot Commodities series. And wherever you can, support practices, people, and organizations contributing to climate and supply chain solutions. If you have any suggestions for the next commodity we can cover, we are all ears. We want to hear from you. Follow us on Instagram at Sustainability Defined. Shoot us a DM. Follow us on LinkedIn at Sustainability Defined and shoot us a DM there. Whatever works.
And if you ever want to get in touch with us about how to shop more responsibly, if you have any questions, you can always shoot us an email at hosts@sustainabilitydefined.com. And we want to say a huge thank you to those who reached out to meet up with us at New York Climate Week. We're sorry we couldn't see everyone, but are so thankful for you and our lovely and supportive community.
Thank you, guys. See you next time.
See you next time.